And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and of course, I am also its creator. So, today, this is actually the second edition of Four Corners of the World. And our topic for today is third culture kid parenting. So, for those of you who already tuned in for my 100th episode, Four Corners is not like my usual style. It's not my usual style. It's not whereby it's me and my interviewee, and then we'll just be discussing on all of the TCK related or transnational related that we upbringing that we do. Uh, Four Corners will invite a dialogue session, and this thing will actually be discussing on a certain topic that I think could be something that to be discussed about, or it could be something that could be considered a trend at that time. So we have actually had Cheyanne before, but this time her other half is actually with us. And Kim, do you mind waving your hands, please? All right. And also to join us, another one of our panelists, and last but definitely not least, is we actually have Ági with us. Ági actually runs the handle tck.mama on Instagram, and she's actually somebody that I contacted on a frequent basis. So, yeah, this is going to be our panelist for today. So, let's just begin. The first question will be on what is the how do you guys feel though, like how your kids when they will how you guys will handle it when your kids are interested on exploring their roots. Like for example, Kim and Cheyenne's son Mason is of course a Belgium citizen, but of course his grandparents, he still has Shay's side of the family who are Americans, and he will definitely want to explore it a little bit more when he grow older. And for Aggie, your case is that if I'm not mistaken, you consider yourself an immigrant, and your kids are third culture kids, right? So how will you guys feel you guys will handle it when they come to that age?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. Yeah, so I consider myself an immigrant in the UK. I originally come from Hungary. When I married my husband, we lived in Hungary for 3 years and we had our first son there. And then we moved back to the UK. And one interesting thing is that my oldest, who's now 7, he used to tell people, and he had this line that he would say that he's Hungarian because he was born there. So his understanding was that your nationality is where you are born. And he would say, I'm Hungarian, and you guys, to the sister and little brother, you guys are English because you were born here in the UK. So yeah, that was quite funny to see him talk about it like that. But I think now he's growing older, he's starting to grasp it a little bit more. This summer we went back for a longer visit. Before that, we weren't able to go for 2 years for obvious reasons. And I put a big emphasis on trying to show them more of the country, of my country, where I come from. So we didn't spend as much time with family and visiting friends as I usually would, but we, just as a little family unit, the 5 of us, spent time in the countryside to see the countryside life, to introduce it to them. So yeah, I think, let me hand it back to you. Does that sort of lay out how I'm trying to, address this?
I love it. Calvin, should I pick up the question from here?
By all means, Shay.
Okay, okay. I have to say, spending a summer in the Hungarian countryside sounds quite lovely to me.
Yeah.
So I think I want to add that part of our culture to our children's upbringing here
Europe,
in a
right?
future, yes, summer trip. But as Calvin's shared, so Kim is Belgian. We are living in his native land, and if you can't hear already by my accent, I am American. And so we have Belgian American children. We have one together, and then Kim also has an older daughter who is 13. So she is just Belgian, born Belgian in Belgium. Her mom is also full Belgian. So she gets a little bit of American culture just from having me as her stepmom. But our son is definitely caught between two worlds because he is a Belgian citizen. However, at the age, I think, of 6 or 8 weeks, he was born 2 weeks into the first lockdown. So everything was a little crazy then, but he became a US citizen when he was just 6 or 8 weeks old. So we took that initial step right away to take him to the American embassy here in Brussels and start that legal journey. But I think we know culture is so much more than just what it says on a piece of paper or what it may say on your passport. And so that's something that I feel as an American, I have almost a little bit of an unfair advantage to the rest of the world because American culture is everywhere. So I can be here in Belgium, and we put on Netflix or we put on a TV or we put on the radio, and chances are you're going to see an American film, or you're going to hear lyrics in English because it's being produced by Hollywood in the US. So I would say that part of my culture, it's nice. It's a very, I think it's an encouraging thing to know that also my native language, English, is spoken by so many people as their second language, even here in Belgium, where in our area, our first language is Dutch. But of course it's always that conundrum I feel when you're living somewhere other than where your culture is and derives from. You can always share with people, like maybe Ági showing her children, like, okay, here's the countryside of Hungary, and here's Hungarian food, or, for us, like cooking him an American meal or showing him American movies. But at the end of the day, it's like there is a spirit and a belief system and value system in each culture that is harder, I think, to pass along. And that's something I know for us, we've talked about. That's the part we have to be intentional with, because that's the part that's not around our kids. That's the part that we would have to purposefully bring into our house.
Because the America that you see in the movies or that you
Right.
hear on the radio is not really, it's like
or the full picture. It's not
it's
the
like
full
a
picture.
stereotype, right?
Yeah.
That's being presented there.
Yeah.
So it's like your duty to give a fuller scope, to not listen just to Billie Eilish or so, but also to some country folk music. And
speaking from experience here, putting on the classics, putting on not just what's the music of our youth, of course, but what is also modern day. That's also, I think, a challenge when you're raising your children away from your own culture or your own land, is you're also kind of sharing with them, because I think in this conversation we can share, or we can understand that culture is not just based on a location, but a time period too. So sometimes I think, gosh, what I'm sharing with my children is my version of America, my 1980s, 1990s childhood, which is so different than the current scope of what American kids do nowadays. Gosh, I'm starting to feel that old, like, kids these days. But yeah, I guess I would just sum it up and just say that I think for us, and maybe we'll go further into this as we go into the interview, but I've noticed our son, again, is 20 months old. So the parenting is just beginning, like the raising is just beginning. He's kind of moving past that survival zone. Calvin, when you have kids someday, you'll see the first kind of 2 years, you're just making sure they can survive, they can be bathed and fed and not jump off of cliffs. But then now it's like, okay, like, ooh, the values and learning right from wrong. And so for us, something that's so important is I've noticed since living abroad myself now for 3 years that the liberty and the freedom and the genuine American spirit, the heart of the American spirit is what I want to pass on, and not so much the surfacey things of the American culture.
I'm glad Kim mentioned about stereotype. So one of my favorite movie growing up is actually Bloodsport, which actually stars Jean-Claude Van Damme. And
Who's from
yeah,
Brussels?
who is from Brussels, Belgium. And by the way, there's a gentleman who is considered a pro wrestling legend called Karl Gotch, who is if I'm not mistaken, he's a German citizen who is of Belgian descent. So I always kind of assume that Belgian people somehow are, I don't know, in a sense, are, maybe you can call it the prodigy of violence. So that's what I assume. So thank God that's been dispelled. Thank God that's growing up. Sorry about that, Kim.
Violence. That's hilarious. Because I, knowing my husband, he's like the complete opposite. So it is funny about
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Awesome.
Now, okay, Cheyanne, you echoed you echoed something that you are also already mentioned in your previous session, which is the spirit that the Americans have, and it's something that you wish to pass on to Mason. Yeah. Now,
Yes.
this is actually something that I actually want to. My next question is, oh, hello, hi, buddy.
There's Mason.
Hello,
He knew we were
hi, buddy.
and
Hi.
he Dumbo on too, of course. Little bit of American culture right here, the Disney. Right. Thank you, buddy. Oh, okay.
Okay.
And there's his age. There's the toddler. Daddy's gonna go love on him, but I'll happily take your question. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No worries, no worries. Yeah, I actually want to ask with the two moms here is that what do you guys feel about, have you guys worried about things such as cultural bias or cultural favoritism? So I'm not, as I said, I'm not a parent. I'm not a parent. I have no kids on my own. I'm not even married. But being a third culture kid, one of the issue that we have ever experienced is that we have a certain bias of one of our host countries, or even one of our own passport countries. Sometimes, like for me, for example, I still favor to live in Singapore as compared to Indonesia. And of course, it's not that I mean, I have equal love for both of the homes, but well, it's just where you are feel most comfortable and inclined to, because that's where you spend more time with. Now, for the both of you, for Aggie, you are in Hungary. Oh, sorry, you're in the UK. My apologies. My apologies. Uh, However, as you did mention, you will want to introduce to your kids about the Hungarian culture. However, it's not going to be exposed to them as frequently as when they spend more time in the UK. And for Kim and Cheyenne, okay, he's a little cranky. It's okay. It's okay. No worry.
Okay.
For Kim and Cheyenne, Mason will spend a lot more time in Belgium as compared to the United States. So how do you guys feel you guys will handle about this cultural favoritism, if you want to call it?
I can go first. We can go first
Yes,
this time.
ma'am.
So Aggie, you can have a moment to think about it. Yeah, that is such a realistic concern, I think, an obstacle for parents, because on one hand, I am very proud of where I come from. I don't think American culture is better or worse than any other country, but I am proud to be American. And it's hard to know that my children, especially if we, for the near future, we definitely are going to remain here in Belgium. Someday we may immigrate back to the States. but just knowing that they will only know American culture either through myself or through the phone or through the few visits that they would make to the States yearly. And so it is a challenge. It is an obstacle. I think part of it, though, honestly, is my husband and I, Kim and I have a coaching program where we coach multicultural step families. And one thing that we share with them is it's got to start in your own mind, your own mindset. I think the mindset I have to bring to my parenting is realizing that Mason and any of our future children are going to be shaped more by the Belgian culture than by the American culture, simply because it's the culture that they are going to be more immersed in. So even in my uncomfortability, I have to realize, like, Mason is first and foremost a Belgian citizen. He is more a Belgian boy than an American boy, just simply because that's who he's surrounded by. His family members are Belgian, his friends are going to be Belgian, and maybe other cultures, which I say, please bring it on, but he is also learning, he is becoming bilingual, and I was not raised bilingual. And so we're kind of at the same level of Dutch right now, which is great. And eventually, though, he's gonna surpass me more than likely, and he'll be teaching me. So I think it takes a lot of surrender and humility from a parent to realize, like, there are going to be some ways that you may not be able to relate to your children in a way that maybe your friends or your family relate to their children when they're raised in the same culture. And so for me, it's being open to Mason also teaching me, Mason also showing me the way, showing me the Belgian culture, while also making sure that he has healthy opportunities and influences with his American culture, that when he does go to the States, that we would have some really good experiences. Sorry about that, guys. He's having a little bit of a challenging morning. But yeah, that's where my heart aligns, I'd say, is sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. That's parenting, right? Is you never know, you never know what's going to happen or when the next tangent may go on or what. So, but sorry, how about Ági? If you'd like to take over, I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Okay, yes, I would echo what you said, Cheyanne, that I think I came to a point where I had to come to this realization or acceptance that the idea of home for me is so different to my kids, and that from that point onwards, that really helped me. And also, I'm not. I think we are never to force any of our culture, or for me, that's what my theory is, that I want to introduce my kids to where I come from, and take them for visits, and we eat food from where I come from. I try to teach them language, but that's not going so well. But also, it's just this, I guess from me, acceptance that they will feel so different about home than what I feel, because I still feel that I'm 100% Hungarian. That's where I come from, and I have not citizenship in this country yet, but as I'm allowed to live here. That's it, basically. Yeah. So.
Sorry, may I just check for both of your current host countries? Yeah, do they allow dual citizenships? I know UK allow dual citizenship, but does Hungary, right?
Yes. So my kids are dual citizens, and they have both passports. That was one of the things that I had to do this summer, actually. So I had frequent trips to the offices. So I got the IDs and passports sorted for them. And I think that's another thing that helps them with the knowledge, even if it's not in their heart, but it's in their mind. So that's two different things, but still, it's still there, And for me, I have one passport and one citizenship, but I'm going to be applying for the UK citizenship soon. Yeah.
Cheyenne, what about your case though? Does Belgium allow dual citizenship, or for only Mason will be having dual passport?
Yes. So Belgium does allow dual citizenship. And so Mason already is a dual citizen. He has his Belgian and his American. So that's always fun when we travel, especially during COVID. That was really great because there were some situations had he not been a American citizen, I may not have been able to introduce him to my parents last year. But all that to say, here in Belgium, when I've lived here 5 years, I can become a Belgian citizen and have dual citizenship as well. And that would be, I think, on my bucket list. I'm about 3 years in, so I have 2 more years to go. But Kim also, upon us wanting to immigrate to the States someday, he also could get his American citizenship, because he's married to me. So
over time.
perks.
But,
but over time, but it's possible.
I had to step away for a moment. But there are two things that stand out to me that I wanted to share with you guys. Number one, I think a big difference that we see in our home and in your home, ma'am, is that over here we're living in Belgium, but in our home we speak English. We speak Shai's
Mostly
language. And I'm not sure. I'm assuming that in England, you guys are speaking English.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So Mason will be more immersed in the American language.
Just because of the language.
Because of the... That's something that stands out to me. And one other thing that I noticed is that Shai shared with me that living outside of the US made her become more aware of US values and beliefs. And when you're living in your native country, everything is just normal. But when you, and I'm sure you can relate to that too, moving to Singapore, is that now you become more aware of those Indonesian values, so that you are more aware of the message that you can pass on to your children there.
Yeah. And Hungarian, British as well.
I can imagine, yeah.
No kids yet. No kids yet. No kids yet.
Felt like realizing, wow, I thought that was normal, but it's more like not everyone's normal.
No, yeah.
And if I may elaborate a little bit more on that last part, I heard you say, sir, that you appreciate where you at again?
Singapore.
Singapore. Yeah, I grew up in Singapore. Correct.
You like Singapore more than you do Indonesia?
And sorry about that. About that. It's in a residential wise. Yeah.
I think that's very human. I think we both, in any culture, you have things that you like and things that you dislike. And I think that having a kid growing up in between cultures, you get to choose what feels best to you. What values do I want to instill? And what are small-minded European Belgian beliefs that I do not want to my son to believe in? Then we can go to that free-spirited American mind. So I think that you get to design, you get to like pick and copy paste or whatever how you want to make your own.
We could call edit that. We could call that edit. Or
edit.
That's all that edit. Copy paste kind of sounds, I don't know. You can always see the lining. So I mean, at the end of the day, why I don't like that term is because at the end of the day, different cultures form third culture kids, is because maybe you might be somebody who is not a lot more straightforward, but the thing is that when you are told to move to a country that maybe is a lot more passive, you are supposed to code switch, but at the same time, it does not mean that part is gone. It's not, you can just remove it out and then you insert something new. It's there at the first place. And in a sense, it coexists, if you want to call it. I mean, you can call it the collision of culture, if you want to call it. But yeah, I think that's how I see it.
Yeah. Please don't forget that nowadays, 21st century, I think internet is also a big player. I think every kid growing up nowadays is some kind of an interculture.
Yeah, it's true. I actually presented a topic called Digital Culture Kids with the Interchange Institute some time back. It was actually inspired by my now he's going to turn 5 soon, but at that time he was 3, my 3-year-old nephew.
Ah,
When I was babysitting him, he was watching YouTube Kids, and he's at that time his bahasa is still gibberish. He still can't speak that well yet, and yet he can say "Tonde esta," which
Right? It's
right?
so awesome.
What exactly? Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? How do you know that? You can't even speak your own language.
Okay.
But yeah, that was something. That was actually why one of the inspiration for this particular topic is because um, parenting for transnational citizen or third culture kids will have to adapt in a sense, and I think it's a topic worth discussing. And if I may say so, I mean that's why I created it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And we see that a lot in our own home, just the adaptation happening right in front of our faces, because we have not just our two cultures coming together and parenting our son together, but Kim's daughter lives with us half of the time, and a year ago she was living with us full time. And so talk about a cultural collision. This girl had grown up being raised by two very Belgian parents, and all of a sudden this American comes in, and so her world completely flipped upside down. Even not just the underlying values that I realized I have, I mean that's the deeper level, but the very surfacey level is this girl never had English spoken in the home before. She never had to worry about not being able to understand, or so that was a really huge collision for us in the beginning. And we also realize how to this day it still impacts just our overall family and our overall family life, because Kim's daughter, now 3 years into our family, our new co-created family, she now understands English, but she still doesn't speak it. There's still a little bit of a fear there. So it is funny how in our house there's like two languages. There's kind of a third. You talk about a third culture. There's a third language which we call like Flanglish. It's like or Dunglish, Dutch English kind of going on in the house. And so it's just funny to see how even culture is brought through that way through language as well.
And at the same time, we can have our house rules and our beliefs and our conversations, but
Yeah.
then she goes to her room and she has her phone and her iPad, and she has like, well, no TikTok no more at this point, but who knows what influences she's immersing herself in. Then we have no idea at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next time we will be called iHumans instead of phone. We humans will become the headphone. No, I'm just kidding. Now, maybe this question is actually a tribute for one of my past interviewee, and also for actually it's his mom. Her name is Sharon Vogel. She's the mother of Ben Vogel, who passed away earlier this year. So I actually took a month off after my 100th episode, is because at that time I actually lost my own cousin who I'm particularly close to growing up. And while I've never had the privilege of meeting Mrs. Sharon Vogel immediately at that time, but she was incredibly, incredibly supportive of my channel when it first started. And in fact, when I actually know her story, I really, really want to shed a tear, is because I'm somebody who is particularly close to my own mom. And the thing is, for her, is that she grew up in Boise, Idaho, which is, well, way far from any kind of this kind of global community. And then the first country that is her kids' earliest TCK experience is in Taiwan, which is completely different from its own already. Especially at that time, it was like in the 90s. So for the Americans, I think Shay can relate to this most. It's a completely alien country that you guys never knew anything about. So
Chinese province.
Oh, I know.
yeah,
No, it's
Well,
not.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you guys can visit it sometime later. I think some of the borders are opening up already. Okay. Yeah. So why? As I mentioned this, the question I want to ask is that, what do you guys feel is to assist in facilitating in the different cultures that make all of of your household? I always feel one of the thing that I always notice is that there's always a lack of acknowledgement for your kids. Is because they well there are cases of third culture kids in the past whereby their parents do not wish for them to acknowledge the other part of the
Mm.
world that they grew up in. Yeah, they want to just acknowledge, okay, you're here, so you're supposed to be like how the people are here. In fact, I actually still experience that now as an adult. So yeah, maybe I can pass the floor back to all my panelists.
Awesome.
I
Aggie,
think, yeah,
have
I I would say there is perhaps always going to be a dominant identity, or part of that identity has a dominant side attached to, where, you know, like for example for my kids, it's they speak English, we speak English in our home, and you know, but the education, it really influences them. And yeah, so that's their dominant, but there is always a little part, and I think that's yeah. So I forgot to mention that my husband is also half Brit and half American, so there's a little bit of that as well. Yeah. So so what we try and do is, what we have been trying to do in the past years, is work out how we do celebrations, for example. So we try, not, it doesn't always happen every year, but we try to do Thanksgiving, for example. That's a big part of my husband's upbringing because his mom is American, and I want to carry that on, and at the same time doing how the way we do you know, Christmas and all the rest of it. We want to make or create a good balance, even though there is always going to be a dominant culture for my children, but to keep that tradition and balance. That's what I'm trying to do. Hope that sort of answers your question.
It
I was
answers it well, Aggie. It answers it well, Aggie. Don't worry.
And I was going to piggyback right off of Aggie's statement about Thanksgiving, because I'm like, absolutely. Can we all please embrace all of the feast and all of the customs and traditions that involve like gathering around food? Like those are the traditions I love to keep alive. And funny enough, we also just this year celebrated our, you know, Kim's family's first Thanksgiving. And so it was also Mason's first Thanksgiving. And that's something I really wanted to celebrate and bring over here. And we kind of went all out with not just the traditional American food, which what we could find here. We couldn't find a full turkey. I had to make like steaks. But we also brought in like the history, because we believe that a huge part of also sharing the culture with the kids is kind of not just where we are with our culture, but where we've been and where we came from. So Thanksgiving does celebrate the origins of the first Europeans, you know, going to America. So we had them decorate little pilgrim hats, like the original Europeans that came to the U.S. And Kim was even wearing a headdress, actually a Native American headdress, as the chief sitting at the table. So that's kind of a way, especially when the kids are young, we find ways not just to bring in, okay, so the holidays, but what else around the holiday other than just eating? We were trying to think, what historically could we bring in? What music could we put on? What films would support something like this? This year, I feel like it would be fun to celebrate the 4th of July, which is America's Independence Day. And then Belgium's Independence Day is July 21st. So it's kind of two big celebrations of independence right there in the same month. But I think overall, an overarching thing is something that I've realized, again, as Kim said, I think the person and of us, the do between us two, I am the one living outside of my norms and my culture, so I am definitely more aware of what's missing. What I feel I want to make sure I add to my parenting, because it's not just the norm here. And one of those for me that's very important is my faith. So in America, I could very easily find a church almost on any corner. I would know that the spiritual values and the beliefs that I have would be collectively around. I could easily find a community or groups for Mason to join, where here that's just not the normal. It's very different faith backgrounds. So I've noticed with anything, but with this example, I have to be intentional. I can't just expect the culture to help me with that, as I may have in America, or it's not as easy to find other people who maybe have those same values or beliefs as I do. So here, I just feel like, again, whether it's faith or it's maybe a certain lifestyle choice that you choose, it's like when you live in a different culture and you want your kids to experience something that's deeper, like values and beliefs, you have to be very intentional. You have to seek it out and not just expect that the culture is going to help you with it, because it really does now lie on your shoulders.
Yeah. One thing that stands out to me that I would like to add to that is that I think that there must be some, even though that I'm born and raised in Europe, you're born and raised in America, but there has to be like some kind of a attraction there. What I'm trying to say is that
I am totally attracted.
I know that, yeah, totally. I know that society will always try to make us conform to like this unity, and then I feel very blessed that we have this American soul in our house that says like, you don't have to tell me what to do. I'm a free man and I'll make my own choices. And I have that little rebellion side in me as well. Yeah. And I think that's what attracted you to some degree. But I feel like we can instill that value in our kids more. Say like, hey man, you don't have to do something if you don't feel like it's right. You don't have to do it just because someone else tells you to do it. Make your own decisions, think for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's some,
or focusing on something that, again, we work with our couples that are in multicultural step families, is we really help the couple find the overlap, focus on the similarities. So I would say the same with multicultural parenting. Even though there are some families that have very different cultures, we do believe, as you said, that there's something that there has to be something that overlaps, because the couple found each other somehow. They weren't too different or too at war with each other, or more than likely, or there's something about the differences, right, that intrigued them about one another. And so to keep that marriage, obviously a strong foundation, but to keep the parents together as far as parenting cohesively as a strong unit, we always recommend, and what we do ourselves is like, okay, let's narrow in, let's focus on the similarities of our culture, of our beliefs, and celebrate the differences, but let's make sure we don't forget to look for the similarities too, and to see where there's an overlap.
Okay. Sorry. This is for my own personal knowledge, yeah, because I actually don't celebrate Thanksgiving, since none of my host country or countries I've ever visited is during Thanksgiving, and both of your homes celebrated Thanksgiving. Can you please explain to me what is stuffing of turkey means? Because I always assume turkey is just a giant chicken. So I never understood what it means by stuffing the turkey. And some of my experience in understanding Thanksgiving is through watching sitcom. And a lot of times it might not be, since there's always got to be on the comical aspect to it. Like, like maybe, I don't know, somebody's head got stuck in the bottoms of the turkey. I don't know what is that. I don't think that's an actual tradition. So maybe please explain to me a bit, what is the stuffing of turkey is supposed to be?
How do you guys do it in your home?
Oh, I think you should answer this, because I have a very tiny part of me that's American by marriage only, so you go for it.
Yes, yes. Well, I'll tell you the real way. I mean, I briefly touched on the European way I had to do it is there were no full bird turkeys here. So I could get chicken, but I was like, no, it has to be turkey on Thanksgiving. Even if get like lunch meats like this, I was like, it's going to be turkey. But Kelvin, so you have the bird, the big meaty part, right? And for lack of a better term, you spread the legs, right? Okay, so inside you have to take out, a lot of times when you buy them, they still have the guts and things on the inside, so you need to clean it out. And then what you put inside, hence the word stuffing, is a beautiful mixture of carbs. It is like bread and butter, and then there's a little bit of salad or vegetables in there. You can put carrots, you can put celery, and the best part of it, I think, for me, is all of the herbs you'd put in there. So rosemary, sage, you could put basil, all of these like really rich green herbs, and put it in there, and then you actually cook it all inside the turkey, which, depending on how you like it, I mean, in America, you know, the land of freedom and choices, you can bake it, you can fry it, you can boil it. I mean, you can do a little bit of everything, but just imagine this stuffing, this bread mixture is inside that bird cooking for multiple hours. And when it comes out, it is just as flavorful and juicy as the bird itself. Ugh,
Well done.
so good.
Sounds
Well done.
great. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good explanation. If you guys have not experienced Thanksgiving, that's
There's
It's
no
a
way to
little.
do it.
That's a vivid explanation, but okay, it's fine.
Very good.
Aggie, anything to add on to that?
One thing that I find really hard is when we were in Hungary, I had to look everywhere for a turkey, and that was difficult. But here in the UK, it's easier. But also, it's the oven, the size of the oven that you struggle with here, because in America, the ovens are like 4 times as big as we have here. So I'm not doing a turkey; it's not possible. It doesn't fit. Yeah.
True.
Everything is a little bit smaller, I think, here in Europe.
Yeah.
Bigger and better.
And the
Okay.
so speaking of raising kids between two cultures, so we're not able to go to the States this year for Christmas, but we are going in January. And so we'll be going for 3 weeks, just Mason, Kim, and I. And it's great because Kim is finally able to come, because for the past few trips, he wasn't able to because of the corona pandemic. But my parents already let me know, okay, we're freezing a turkey. So when you get here a few months late, you can cook us Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, nice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Oh, Cheyanne, you mentioned earlier on Christmas. Yeah. Before we started rolling, you mentioned that there's a Belgium tradition. That is, in a sense, an equivalent of Christmas in the rest of the world, actually. Just to let you guys know, so this episode is going to be released on the 22nd of December because in Indonesia, 22nd of December is actually Mother's Day. Is because it's actually going to be released on Mother's Day. Kim, I apologize. I know you're not considered a mom, but yeah, that's the closest day that has a parent related to it. So yeah, sorry about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so
that's
for
so
that, yeah, for holidays though, okay, the reason why this is a tactic I called honey and hatchet is because earlier we mentioned about Thanksgiving. Recently in the United States, there is a requirement to do a study on the Native American because of the I mean the less than ideal history of how Thanksgiving started at the first place. Now, I actually want to, if you guys don't mind, I actually would love Kim to actually take the lead on this first. Is because if I'm not mistaken, Kim, you're a teacher, right?
Yes, sir.
How, yep. How would you feel though educating your children since the young age about the less than ideal version of a certain history, how important do you feel is acknowledging? Because the thing is we humans make mistakes. We human makes mistake, but the thing is that owning up to the mistake is one part about it. But the thing is that in the past this may not have been done as ideally, but now it's going to be 2022 soon. There are certain ways the way we see things has changed, the way we accept things have changed. So how do you feel about it, like accepting the negative part of our history? How important is it to teach the younger generation?
Right. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer in a very popular way, but I have to be honest, since you asked my opinion. Especially when it's regarding young children, I would focus on the celebrating, on the magical part. Dress up like cowboys and Indians and make it fun and enrich their minds and souls, and have them see that in different times people dress differently and had different customs. Make it an enrichment part, and I would wait until they're old enough to see that maybe the world that we live in is not always a beautiful place. I wouldn't feel comfortable myself crushing little kids' hearts and souls by focusing on the things that we're not proud of. That's how I would go about it.
Yep. Don't worry. There's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, it's everybody's perspective. And yeah, maybe both the moms. Is there anything else you would like to add on to what Kim said?
How dare you? I'm just kidding.
I know.
We need to teach them what's real so they don't repeat it.
Yeah, sure. Hashtag about that.
Of course, right? But no, it's funny. I love hearing my own husband's perspective. I know that a lot about you, but something I was thinking, Calvin, when you asked the question was, I know you asked kind of from an American more perspective, but here where we live in Belgium, about 100 meters away from our home where we're sitting, there's actually an old building that's now apartments, and one part is apartments, one part is a museum. But it used to be barracks where they would hold Jews before they would transport them to the camps in Germany. And so I instantly was thinking, yes, I can only imagine, for instance, German citizens or German teachers having to teach about Nazism and what happened during World War II. And even for us as well. I mean, Mason's too young to understand now, but we've brought him and walked him through these museums. He plays around them. And eventually there is actually an old train car right outside the museum that he plays around. And so right now, of course, yes, I'm not like, oh, don't touch that, or you need to admire this. But over time, I do want him to know. I do want him to know, hey, this is a part of history, very much a history here. There were many Belgians that were, yes, in captivity, so to say, or that Germany was encamped here, but there was also many Belgians that went along with the hatred and what the Nazis were doing. So it is a part of the culture. So sharing that, kind of like you said, that there were things in the past that people made choices with, and this is how it impacted history and how it impacted the culture that to this day, because it's just like mistakes in our own lives, right? Sometimes we look back and say, oh, would we have done that if we could do it again? But maybe you wouldn't be who you are, and maybe our cultures wouldn't be who they were if some of these, what we would label bad choices were made. And so for me, I think, as just to echo on what Kim said, I think, when we look at his daughter who's 13, she is at that developmental stage where she can have a deeper conversation. We could put on a World War II film and talk about what was going on and ask her, like, what do you see as off, or what message are they trying to send, or how do you see that alive in the world today, and take it from there.
Good answer.
Yeah.
The Cleymans, everyone. All right. Ági?
Yeah, I think we are cautiously trying to explain to the kids, according to their age. And my 7-year-old is understanding more and more, and I'm more open with him to talk about things. And it's interesting that my little 5-year-old actually said the other day that she learned it in school, and I mean, this is what we teach at home as well, that mistakes are good because you learn from them. And I mean, I think that's what we need to realize and see, that yes, mistakes happen, and in history, you don't want to say that mistakes in history are good, but the bad mistakes in history teach us so much. Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Well said, yeah.
What cool.
Sorry?
What a great school for your children. Often, Kim's been a teacher for 19 years, and I feel in your experience, they don't quite allow that kind of mentality in his experience. So how great that your children are in a school system that's affirming your values too, because that's obviously not always the case. And I know that's a huge weight on parents' shoulders of choice in education and where they send their children to school.
Okay, I actually would like to applaud that particular line. The reason being is that growing up in, well, most of the countries that has for me is all Asian country, other than the fact that I went to a private school which is affiliated with Ireland. So that's most of my background.
Wow.
And the part whereby acknowledging and, in fact, in a sense, respecting that people make mistakes is something that in the past has been lacking, especially, well, maybe we can use some of the examples. Is some of my parents' generation believe that illness is not supposed to be something acknowledged. If you're sick, you're supposed to pretend that nothing's wrong, even though you are suffering on the inside.
Yeah.
So the fact that nowadays there are, as time has passed on now, that there are such teachings that actually start to acknowledge some of these flaws is actually good, and it's something to actually be used to improve upon, is something worth applauding.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
All right. We actually have one last question for this panel, and the
Bring it.
question will be: how do you see this transnational life, this intercultural life, be the template of the next generation, the ones? Okay, I'm considered a millennial generation, so now I think it's Gen Z. I don't know what alphabets will there be. So for the upcoming generation, though, how do you think that the transnational life be normalized? Because, like, for example, here in Asia, it's not something that is easily accepted. I know there are organizations in the Europe and the US that's starting to make a move, or there's always been established. But at the end of the day, culture and transnational life is not a puzzle that you can just easily assemble. It's really, really difficult. It's because everybody have a different approach. Everybody have a different kind of mentality. How do you think this will be normalized in the future, though, for the next generation?
I would jump in and say I think it is already normalized. I think movement is limited at the moment due to the pandemic, but it's already. The thing is, we live in such a divided world. So many things that the world is divided over these days. I think it's going to be like that with global living, global life as well. There will always be people who are more comfortable, or they just don't want to move, and then there's a lot more movement, in the last couple of decades. So I think that it's kind of polarized. I don't believe it will go one way or another. if that makes sense. I know that I have family who appreciate staying and appreciate the monocultural life, and that's beautiful as it is. And then I myself and lots of my other family and friends appreciate the ability to move around and the beauty of bi or multicultural life. So yeah, I would say there's more movement, but it doesn't mean that everyone is moving that way, if that makes sense.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's a very beautiful message there, I feel. Now, we're not living in Asia, so it's hard to make any predictions or statements, but I do feel like if I can believe what the media sends out into the world, but take, for instance, a country like Japan that's very traditional. Supposedly, more and more young women are refusing to get married because then they would have to live in a very strict manner and way. And I think that from the ground up, I think that's a very beautiful example of from the ground up, things will start to change. Younger generations, again, social media and everybody having their own personal television in their hand and they can watch. And I think maybe that's the American soul is being spread more like freedom, make your own choices, do what you want. But I also think that there are a couple of very strict and authoritarian or maybe dictator-arian countries in Asia where people are not so tolerant towards change, but then maybe people will elope and run away and try to revolt, and I think in the end maybe it'll be some kind of a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other. Maybe young people in Japan will say no tradition, away with all, and then over time they will say like, oh, there was something beautiful in there, let's honor our cultural heritage. And then over time I think it's not an either or story, but I think they will come together and coexist. And yeah, like you said, be proud of what makes you unique. Yes, we are all world civilians and we're all human, and let's embrace that part. And let's all speak English. I think that's also a commonality. Everybody's half Hollywoodized, but also be proud of what makes you unique.
Yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All
I
right.
think if I could just add something really quickly, is that
Please.
all right? Awesome. The only thing I would just add to that is looking at our little man here and your 5 and 7 year olds, and just imagining that this is their normal. Like their normal is going to be growing up as a global citizen because they are in between a few cultures. And I think besides the invention of just social media, but if we think about our grandparents or even our parents' generation, it just wasn't as practical to get to other places. To like Kim and I actually met at a wedding. I was here for 1 week to come visit a friend from French classes 15 years ago. This girl and I were in French class. I came to her wedding. I literally met him in the castle that they had their wedding at. And 4 months later, we were married and I had immigrated to Europe. And so it's just a couple decades ago, more than likely, I wouldn't have been able to fly to Europe. I might have never met a European. So all that to say, what I'm trying to get at is that the more and more our families like ours exist, the more and more children that come out of families like this, that grow up in a healthy cohesiveness of cultures, I do think there'll be more children like that in the world in the future generations that will go on to also be open to marrying people and creating a family of their own, or just interacting with people from multiple cultures all over the world, and versus seeing themselves, what I hope for my children is versus seeing themselves as Belgian or American or European or North American, is I would love for them to see themselves as global citizens of the world that could interact and love people from every corner of the earth.
Well said, Cheyanne. All right. I think Kim is busy with your son, so not to worry. If he is able to make it, not to worry. We've already been graced with his presence. So yeah, I actually just want to end. I always want to end this show with gratitude. Yeah. So for both of you, right, is like, what do you think has been the biggest blessing, in a sense, for welcoming this open world in this transnational life, in this community, in your home, outside of the upbringings that you've always hold on to growing up? In for Cheyanne, it's the Americans, and for Ági, it's for being a Hungarian. What do you feel has been the biggest blessing of it?
I'll go first. So I think Hungarian culture is very family orientated, and I grew up holidaying with my cousins, and we were very close knit together, and I really feel that blessed me, and that I take with me and into my family life now, and try and put emphasis on that, and just the idea of the wider family, and coming together and celebrating and keeping in touch. I think that was ingrained in me, and that was a huge blessing for me. That I would like to take further as well.
Yes. Wow. Ági, I'm so inspired by your story. I'm giving you a big hug and a high five.
Virtual. We are still at keeping a safe distance, people.
Yeah.
Very safe. In fact, we are
Very.
very safe.
Yes. If I could add on to that, I just love how, because we now have a transcultural, transnational family, it's not only grown me. I never imagined the person that I am today, 3.5, 4 years ago when I first met Kim, that I would be this person. I thought I was open-minded then. When I met Kim when I was 30, and I had traveled the world. I'd gone on different service projects throughout the world. And so I thought, wow, like I'm well adjusted, I'm cultured, but nothing prepares you or really cultures you like living in another culture, immersing yourself, being a wife, a mother, a stepmom, all in a culture separate of my own, is what I went through. But what's great is that it not only created, I feel, this more world view in myself, but also through the blessing of social media, also for all of my family, all of my friends back home. I've really been able to, especially because I'm here in Europe, I've been able to kind of make the history books come alive. I'm very open on social media. So whether I'm actually just showing videos and pictures, or I'm bringing up debatable topics that I'm confronting here, I'll bring it to my social media. So it's amazing how when I go back and speak in person to friends and family, we'll get in these conversations that we never would have before. Or they'll tell me like, wow, something you put out there really made me think, because in my small town where there's just like white European origin people like speaking English for miles, it's just like things they've never even had to deal with, had to talk about, had to imagine. So that's what I think is the biggest blessing, is not only how this transnational life has affected me and my immediate family, but also my extended family as well.
Well said. Okay. I think Kim is stuck there. Not worry. The little guy is more important at the moment. Oh, hello.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so my question to the moms earlier is on how do you feel has been a blessing in welcoming this transnational life in your home, in your lifestyle?
Um, I think it opened my mind, my heart, my soul. Um, it shows you that there's so much more possible beyond the things that we know, that we take for granted, that we think that's normal. This is a way to do it. That's how it's supposed to be. But there's so much more beyond the borders of our ideas and our values and beliefs, and it's been amazing to me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. All right. So that's actually all the questions that I have for my panelists today. So if you are interested to support this channel, you can check the link in my description box. It support this channel at my Buy Me a Coffee. Yeah. So last and definitely not least, I just want to say thank you to everyone here today who has made the time. By the way, Aggie is actually made it at 7 a.m. So I sincerely apologize to that, but
No
time
problem.
zones is not something that
We-
we can
I-
control. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New
And
Year for you guys. Hope 2022 will be a lot better for all of us. And with that, that's the last episode for Global Citizens for the year 2021. Do tune in for 111 episode in January. So with that, take care and take care of yourself and your family. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.